Why is the world still burning? Look at the map. Sudan has been collapsing for years. Yemen is starving. Syria is fractured. Gaza erupts, pauses, and erupts again. Every time we turn on the news, we ask the same questions. Why don't they just stop? Why do the ceasefires always fail? Why are the leaders so incompetent? We tell ourselves a comforting lie. We say these wars continue because of ancient hatreds, or because the fighters are stubborn, or because diplomacy just failed. But what if that's wrong? What if I told you that failure isn't the reason these wars last for decades? What if I told you that for the people pulling the strings, the war is actually working? Welcome to the uncomfortable truth. Welcome to the logic of managed instability. Let's connect the dots. Let's start with a war that everyone seems to forget. Sudan. Millions displaced. A capital city in ruins. On the surface, it looks like a senseless civil war between two generals. But look closer. Sudan isn't just a country. It's a corridor. It controls the Nile. It borders the Red Sea shipping lanes. It sits on gold and oil. A war like this doesn't run on hatred. It runs on supply lines. If a fire burns for 3 years, someone is adding wood. This is the first rule of modern conflict. Wars do not continue by accident. They continue because the instability benefits someone who isn't doing the bleeding. Think about it. If one side wins completely, the external powers lose their leverage. If the country collapses completely, the chaos spreads too far. So, the external powers, the ones sending the drones, the cash, and the diplomatic cover, aim for the middle. Not peace, not total victory, but a slow, grinding stalemate. They don't want to fix Sudan, they want to manage it. This is why ceasefires fail. We think a ceasefire is a step toward peace. To a geopolitical strategist, a ceasefire is just a pause to reload. In a proxy war, like we see in Yemen or Syria, peace is actually dangerous for the people in power. Why? Because peace creates independence. A stable, unified Yemen doesn't need foreign patrons. A stable, strong Syria makes its own decisions. To maintain influence, you need dependency. And nothing creates dependency like war. As long as the fighting continues, the local factions need their sponsors. They need the weapons. They need the money. So the external powers keep the pot simmering. They provide enough weapons to survive, but never enough to win. They provide enough aid to prevent starvation, but never enough to rebuild. It is a cruel, calculated equilibrium. Now, we have to talk about Gaza. Most people see Gaza as a unique tragedy. But if you look at the structure, it fits the exact same pattern. It is just smaller, faster, and much more intense. Gaza exists in a state of permanent tension. For decades, the strategy here hasn't been solution. It has been containment. Why? Because a solution is expensive. A solution requires massive political risk. It requires giving up land or power or leverage. So instead, the world settles for managed instability. The pressure builds, the violence erupts, the headlines scream. Then, a ceasefire is signed, but the blockade remains, the incentives remain, the underlying power dynamic doesn't change, it resets. Just like in Sudan or Yemen, the suffering of the people becomes a tool. Aid becomes a bargaining chip. Borders become levers. Gaza is the ultimate example of what happens when the world decides that managing a conflict is easier than solving it. It's not a failure of the system. For the powerful, this is the system. This brings us to the hardest part to swallow. We like to think that human suffering, starvation, displacement, death, is the thing that forces wars to end. We think, surely if they see the children, they will stop. History tells us the opposite. In the cold logic of geopolitics, suffering isn't a red light. It's a currency. Refugees put pressure on neighboring countries. Starvation brings in international aid dollars that can be stolen or controlled. Humanitarian crises justify foreign intervention. In Sudan, in Yemen, in Gaza, the misery is visible. But notice how the aid is always negotiated? We will let food in if you do X. Survival has become a negotiation tactic. This is heavy. I know. It makes the world feel cruel. But understanding this is the only way to stop being manipulated. When you see a war dragging on for 5, 10, 20 years, stop asking why they hate each other. Stop asking why the diplomats are failing. Start asking, who benefits from this remaining unsolved? These wars do end eventually. They end when the cost becomes too high for the sponsors. They end when the leverage disappears. They end when we stop accepting managed instability as a substitute for peace. Don't just watch the news, read the map, connect the dots, because once you see the machine, you can never unsee it.